So, hello everybody. This is a video that I've actually had a couple people ask me to make lately. One of which is three of close friends. One of which is Colonial Tree Service on Instagram. The other is Coast Cutter on Instagram. If I remember, which I'll try, I'll link to their Instagram pages in the description. Colonial Tree Service is based out of the Massachusetts area, and him and his father are a very good residential tree service company. I never dealt with them personally. They're just not near me, and I do all my own tree work. But I've talked with them a lot, and they're very great people to deal with. They're knowledgeable. And Coast Cutter on Instagram is a extremely skilled fisher out on the West Coast. And yeah, so Steel 038, someone has done what I made the video on. What I wanted to make the video on was this. Tsamura bars. They're one of the more common light bars you see floating around, made in Japan. And I've actually had a few questions about them come up lately from both of them. A few other people over the years just ask me about them because not a lot of people run them compared to the steel light bars, or a lot of people I know used to run the Canons, or not the Canons, the Husqvarnas, which look very similar to the Canon bars. But in my opinion, these are great bars. I don't know why so few people use them. They are on the cheaper side. This one I believe was about $90, which isn't cheap, but for a light bar, especially compared to the steel ES light bars, is actually very affordable. And especially compared to the Canons, which this is a 28-inch Canon Duralight is, I want to say, about $300 almost, at least where I am. The steels were about $150 or so, and this was $90. But overall, they're very good bars. Hold up great. I've run these, I've run Sujis, I've run them all. All the major brands at least. These, for the price, are my favorites. They hold up great. Like the Canon bars, they're a ground bar, unlike the steels and the Husqvarnas, I believe, as well, are laminated bars, meaning they have two plates of steel on the sides, and the middle is hollowed out with the, in most cases, epoxy. In the case of the Canons and the old Oregons, and some of the other ones I've seen floating around, they have a aluminum core, or they mill out the center and fill that with aluminum, which I like better than these in most cases. They're just a lot more expensive, but they're a lot more rigid. The steel bars are by far the lightest of the bars that are currently on the market. They're also some of the more expensive ones, and I've never had problems with how they hold up. I have heard a lot of people complain about how they crack in different areas, mainly back in here, because for them, the actual insert goes all the way back to right about here, which just causes a weak spot by where it attaches to the saw. But overall, they're very good bars. They hold up great. Replaceable tips, greasable tips, which I actually need to do. And overall, they're great. I don't know what else to say about them. They're just great bars for good money. They hold up well. I know a few guys who also run them, and they all seem to like them. Being that they're a little bit thicker than a lot of the other bars, they are a little bit heavier. As I said earlier, the steel bars are the lightest. They're also the most flexible. These are a good middle ground, along with the Sujis and the Walker's bars. Haven't gotten to run those much, but I really want to. I'm gonna try to order one here soon. Those are great bars. But these, great middle ground. They're pretty stiff, pretty light, just good middle ground all around. Around here, my absolute favorites are the Canon Duralight bars, because they're just the stiffest and the most solid feeling. But they also are heavier. I forget how much heavier, but they're not a ton heavier, but they're heavier enough where if you had to pack a saw, I would say go with the Seals, because Seals do have a weight advantage. But overall, these, again, great middle ground. Pretty stiff, pretty solid. Just overall, great bars. They do have their little issues once in a while. Again, but for the money, for how cheap you can get them, they're great. I've got zero complaints. I've had this one for 3 years or so, I want to say. Held up great. Had to flatten it once or twice. Had to do just all the normal things that you gotta do with bars over time. But it's holding up great, lasts well, and doesn't check like some of the bars have. I've had issues with the Sujis in the past. I believe they actually fixed that issue, but those tended to be a little too hard on the rails, so the rails would chip over time, especially if you use them hard, which is not a good thing, especially when you're paying as much as those bars cost. The Sujis and the Tsamuras are very similar in construction and in design, which is kind of nice. I hate this saw for this. Ah, oh, damn it. My wear pads on this are worn out. Just haven't gotten a chance to get to my seal dealer to fix them. But as I was saying, the Sujis in the beginning, like this was a couple years ago, the bar rails would chip and crack very easily, and I know a lot of people who that happened to. And just not a good thing, not something you want to happen on your bar that you paid so much money for. Yeah, keeps falling out. But they still were good bars. They just had that slight little issue. I believe they fixed that now. Have near the new light bar in the line. So I've just been running this one. This is the only light bar I still have with me. I gave a bunch of them away or sold them on saws that I've built. And it was the first one I ever got, and so far it's been, price to performance ratio, it's been my favorite. Again, if you just want the lightest bar possible, you gotta go with Seal. You want the most solid built bar, go with the Canon. You want a really good middle ground for not a lot of money, you go to the Tsamuras, or the Sujis, or the Walkers. They're all very similar. But usually, what usually comes down to, for me, is price and availability. These, pretty much any day of the week, you go on eBay, you go on Amazon, or you walk into any dealership that's an authorized dealer of them. There's a few around me, but these always seem to be in stock. I don't know why. Again, they're really good bars. It's not like they're an inferior product, but a lot of the other ones, can be a bit hard to find sometimes. That's one of the reasons I don't have a tin currently. Because everywhere they're in stock, they're expensive. Everywhere they're not in stock, they were cheap, but they're not in stock. But overall, for the price, these bars are really nice. It's the one thing I have noticed with these that it's not really so much a problem as it's just something odd I've noticed is quite quickly actually the clear coat on the bar has rubbed off in a lot of spots. As soon as I get this tightened up, I'll show you. But it doesn't affect the bar. It hasn't started rusting or anything. It's just something to keep an eye on. It's weird. And what was happening, you could feel it actually in the cut because it would, you actually feel clear coat just start peeling off it. I personally run my chains pretty loose. I apologize about that, everyone. I got a phone call from one of my friends, actually. He's coming by in a little while to drop off one of my saws. It's the 046, actually, that I made a short about. First short on my channel. It's coming back. He's been using it, and he's been using it in some big wood, trying it out, and just putting some hours on it for me. We should have a pretty good video to make about that here soon. But as I was saying, the clear coat starts to chip and fade on it. It's really weird. As you can see, it's all still silver. It hasn't been overheated or anything, but the clear coat still chips. You can see it really bad right there. Up in there. It's the worst right back there, right by the power head. I have no idea what causes it, but it still cuts really well. And it's still a great bar. Like I said, overall, they're great bars, great for the money. They last a long time. There's no burr on it, and it doesn't really form a burr. It's been probably a good 6 months since I've filed a burr. And nothing. It just, these bars last a really long time. They're not overly hard like some of the original Tsujis were. Those had a really bad problem with chipping out over time, where the entire bar rail down to about here would actually chip and break off. I've seen some with 4 or 5 inch chunks, 5 inch long chunks missing out of them. But they seem to have fixed it. Tsujis are really good bars now, along with the walkers. And those are the 3 main bars that are designed like this, with the pockets milled out of a solid steel bar itself. The cannons are a similar design, but instead of having the epoxy in them, they have an actual aluminum insert, which is part of the reason they're heavier but stiffer. And the Husqvarna and the X-Tough lights are very similar to this. They just put a decal over it, I believe. But as I was saying, replaceable tip. Just pop the rivets out, put in a new tip. You can get 3/8, 325, and 404 tips if you want to turn these bars into something special. They're available in 050, 058, and 063 gauge. This is an 050 gauge bar. Got because that's the same gauge I run on all my smaller saws. And over time, as this bar wears, I can swap it out to, rather than squeezing the bar rail continuously, I can swap it out to be a 058 gauge bar. And if that wears out enough, turn it into an 063 gauge bar. And at that point, this bar will have lasted me plenty long enough, and will probably be warped and bent and gotten a good life out of it. Overall, these last a very long time. They last very well. They're hard enough to keep on edge, but not too hard to chip. They're light, they're tough, they're a very good mix. As you can see there, made in Japan. They're great bars. They last a long time, and I've had no complaints with this one so far. But you guys got any other questions? Please ask them in the comments. And Huge thanks to Colonial Tree Service and Coast Cutter on Instagram for this YouTube video idea. Thank you again. See ya.